The phone buzzed again before I'd even finished my coffee. Another text from the unknown number. Asterisk, they're bringing in outside counsel. Hendricks and Sterling. You know them. Asterisk, I did know them. They were sharks. The kind of firm that bled startups dry in arbitration and made you pay for the privilege. In my past life, they'd been the ones who drew up the paperwork that stripped me of everything. They'd buried me in legal fees until I couldn't afford to fight anymore. I'd spent 3 years watching my life's work get dissected by their lawyers while I sat in a one-bedroom apartment eating instant ramen. Not this time, I typed back. Who is this? 3 dots appeared. Then vanished. Then appeared again. Then, asterisk, someone who remembers what you did for them. Someone who owes you. Asterisk, I stared at the screen. The number wasn't in my contacts, but the area code was 415. San Francisco. I ran through every face from my past life, every person I'd helped, every hand I'd extended. There were dozens. I'd been generous back then, before the betrayal taught me to lock everything down. But who would remember, who would owe me enough to reach out now, in this timeline, when I hadn't done anything yet? I didn't have time to solve that puzzle. The next call came in, and this time, I answered. Elara Vance. Ms. Vance. The voice was smooth, practiced, the kind of voice that charged by the minute. This is Arthur Sterling from Hendricks and Sterling. I've been retained by the board of Nexus Dynamics to discuss your recent correspondence. I'm familiar with the firm, Mr. Sterling, and I'm familiar with your rates. The board must be very worried to have sprung for you on such short notice. A pause. He wasn't used to being interrupted. I'm calling to invite you to a meeting. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, at the firm's offices. We believe we can find a mutually agreeable resolution. Let me stop you right there, I said, setting my coffee down. There's no meeting. There's no resolution. There's a buyout and it happens on my terms or I blow the whole thing sky high. You want to know the value of my shares? I have a spreadsheet with 3 different valuation models. I'll be happy to share it with your associates. It's not going to be a cheap conversation for the board, Mr. Sterling. And I suspect their retainer with you is about to get very expensive. Ms. Vance, I understand you're upset. I'm not upset, I cut in.
I'm precise. I'm feral.
And I'm very, very patient. I've been patient for 10 years. I can be patient for 10 more. The only question is whether the board can afford to wait that long. Because every day they delay, the stock drops another 2%. That's not a threat. It's a fact. You can check the tech blogs yourself. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were steady. In my past life, I would have been shaking. I would have been terrified of the consequences. But I'd already lived through the worst outcome. I'd already lost everything once. There was nothing left to fear. The apartment suddenly felt too small. I needed to move, to walk, to think. I grabbed my jacket and headed out the door. The streets of Brooklyn were waking up. Bodegas were rolling up their gates, coffee carts were steaming, and the first wave of commuters was already shuffling toward the subway. I walked without a destination, my feet carrying me past familiar landmarks that felt strange in their newness. The taco place that wouldn't open for another 3 years. The laundromat that would burn down in 2018. The corner where I'd once been hit by a bike messenger and spent a week in the hospital. I passed a small park and stopped. There was a bench under a tree, the kind of bench I used to sit on and sketch code architecture in my notebook. I sat down and pulled out my phone again. The text from the unknown number was still there. I stared at the words. Someone who remembers what you did for them. What had I done? I'd done a lot. I'd hired people who were struggling. I'd funded projects that didn't make business sense, but mattered to the people behind them. I'd given second chances to people who had burned bridges elsewhere. Not all of them had stayed loyal. Most had abandoned me when the board turned against me, too afraid to risk their own careers by supporting the woman who was being systematically destroyed. But some had stayed. One had stayed until the very end. Anya. I almost laughed. Of course. Anya hadn't been in my contacts, because we hadn't met yet. But what if she was already here? What if she was already watching? I opened my email and composed a quick message to the number. Asterisk, if you know me, you know what I'm planning. If you want to help, meet me at the corner of Montague and Henry in 2 hours. Bring a notebook. Asterisk, I sent it before I could second-guess myself. Then I stood up and started walking again. The meeting was a gamble. It could be a trap. It could be Mark trying to get leverage on me. But something in the phrasing of the text felt right. Felt familiar. Felt like the kind of coded language Anya would use that I had 2 hours to kill. I spent them in a diner, nursing a cup of coffee and staring at the spreadsheet on my phone. The numbers were brutal. The board had been hemorrhaging value since my resignation, and the Series B investors were getting cold feet. Whitestone Ventures had already issued a tepid statement about reassessing their position. The stock, which wasn't even public yet, was trading on secondary markets at a 30% discount. They needed me. Not just my algorithm, but my reputation. My name on the leadership page. I was the face of the company, the woman who had built the core code from nothing. Without that narrative, the brand lost half its value. I'd learned that the hard way in my past life. After I was pushed out, the board had tried to erase me. They'd rewritten the company history, framed me as a peripheral figure, a minor contributor. It had worked for a while, but eventually the cracks had shown. The investors had started asking questions. The clients had started defecting. The company had never quite recovered. That was the secret weapon I held now. The future. I knew every mistake the board would make. I knew every strategic error, every market misread, every disastrous product launch that was coming down the pipeline. And I knew exactly how to exploit them, but I also knew that I couldn't do it alone. In my past life, I'd try to fight the board by myself. I'd been brave, but I'd been isolated. I'd had no allies, no support system, no one to watch my back when the knives came out. That was the real reason I'd lost. Not because the board was smarter, but because they were organized and I was alone. This time, I was building an army. The diner door chimed, and a woman walked in. She was tall, sharp-featured, with dark hair pulled back in a severe ponytail. She was wearing a tailored blazer and holding a leather notebook under her arm. Her eyes scanned the room, found me, and she walked over without hesitation. "Ilara Vance," she said. Not a question. A statement. "Anya," I said. "You came." She sat down across from me. "I got your message. Though I have to admit, I'm confused. You don't know me. We've never met. But your message said." "I know you," I said. "I've always known you. You just don't remember." She stared at me. Her expression was unreadable, but her fingers tightened slightly on the notebook. "That's cryptic." "It's honest," I said. "Anya, I need your help. And I need you to trust me, even when it sounds like I'm insane." "Try me," she said, so I told her. I told her about the company, about Mark, about the board. I told her about the patents, the contracts, the hidden clauses that would unravel everything. I told her about the future, not the details, not the magic, but the logic. I told her where the company was heading and why it would fail if the board kept control. Based on the math, I said, Nexus Dynamics is going to crater. The algorithm is only half the product. The other half is the maintenance infrastructure, the customer support pipeline, the continuous integration that keeps the whole thing running. Mark doesn't understand any of that. He thinks the algorithm is magic. It's not. It's a machine, and machines need upkeep. The board is going to gut the engineering team to save costs, and that's going to break the whole system. 6 months from now, they'll be scrambling to hire back the people they fired. But by then, the reputation damage will be done. Anya was silent for a long moment. "And you know this because I've seen it happen," I said. "Not because I'm psychic. Because I was the one who built it. I know its weaknesses. I know where it breaks. And I know that Mark doesn't have the patience or the expertise to fix it." She looked at me differently then. The skepticism was still there, but it was tempered with something else. Curiosity. Maybe recognition. "Assuming I believe you," she said slowly. "What do you need from me?" "I need you to be my eyes and ears," I said. "I need you to stay close to the board, close to Mark, and tell me everything. I need you to be the person who talks to the investors, who builds relationships, who creates the infrastructure that I'm going to need when I take the company back." She laughed. It was a sharp, startled sound. "Take the company back? You just resigned. You gave up your voting rights. You walked away." I walked away from the legal framework, I said. I didn't walk away from the fight. Mark doesn't understand that. He thinks this is about money. It's not. It's about justice. It's about making sure that everyone who watched me fall and did nothing regrets their silence. It's about building something better, something that doesn't destroy the people who build it. Anya was quiet again. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a pen. You said to bring a notebook. I brought one. What am I writing down? I smiled. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of something like hope. Everything, I said. Everything you know about the board. Every conversation you've overheard. Every email that crosses your desk. You're going to be my living archive. You're going to remember what they forget to delete. She flipped open the notebook and started writing, though we spent the next 2 hours building a war plan. She gave me names, dates, conversations. She told me about the board's internal fractures, the petty rivalries, the affairs that someone would eventually try to use as leverage. She told me about Mark's secret meetings with the Whitestone investors, the promises he'd made that he couldn't keep. He told them the algorithm was fully documented, she said. He told them you'd signed off on the transition plan. He's been lying to everyone. Of course he has, I said. That's what he does. That's what he's always done. He tells people what they want to hear, and then he finds someone else to blame when it falls apart. The question is, she said, what do you do with it? You have the information. You have the leverage. But leverage is only useful if you're willing to use it. I leaned back in the booth. You know what I did in my past life? I tried to be gracious. I tried to be the bigger person. I thought if I was generous enough, patient enough, people would eventually see the truth. They didn't. They saw weakness. They saw an opportunity to take more. She watched me, waiting. I'm not doing that this time, I said. This time, I'm going to be the person they're afraid of. The person who doesn't negotiate. The person who doesn't compromise. The person who makes it so painful to fight that they don't even try. Anya studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Okay, she said. Okay, I'm in. Just like that, she said. I've been watching this company fall apart for months. I've been watching Mark take credit for other people's work, watch the board burn through cash like it's water, watch them ignore every warning sign because they're too arrogant to admit they don't know what they're doing. I've been waiting for someone to do something. You're the first person who's actually tried. She reached across the table and shook my hand. Her grip was firm, steady. Let's burn it to the ground, Alara. And then let's build something better. I couldn't help myself. I laughed. It was a rough sound, rusty with disuse, but it felt good. It felt like shaking off a decade of dust. We left the diner together. Anya went west toward the subway, and I turned north toward the park where I'd started my walk. The sun was higher now, the streets busier. The city felt alive in a way it hadn't before. My phone buzzed. A new text from the unknown number. Asterisk, good meeting. Keep her close. She's your best ally. Asterisk, I stopped walking. I typed back. Asterisk, who is this? Asterisk, the reply came instantly. Someone who's been waiting a long time for you to wake up. I stared at the screen. Then I laughed again, softer this time. Whoever it was, they were watching. They were helping. And they were right about one thing. I was awake now. I was awake, and I was hungry, and I was not going to stop until I'd taken everything back. My phone buzzed again. This time it was marked, Alara, please. We need to talk. I know you're angry. I get it. I'd be angry too. But this isn't the way. This isn't who you are. Really, I said. Because I'm starting to think this is exactly who I am. I'm the person you tried to destroy. I'm the person you thought would just roll over and take it. And I'm the person who's going to prove you wrong. Alara, listen to me. The board is meeting tonight. They're going to vote on a resolution that forces your hand. You need to come in. You need to negotiate before it's too late. Too late for what? I said. Too late for me to stop you. Too late for me to protect my work. Too late for me to do what you did to me.
Oh Jesus, Alara.
This isn't a game. There are consequences here. There are real people with real jobs depending on this deal going through. If you blow this up, you're hurting a lot of innocent people. Don't you dare, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. Don't you dare talk to me about consequences. Don't you dare pretend you care about anyone but yourself. You knew exactly what you were doing when you had me sign that transfer. You knew you were cutting me out. You knew you were taking everything I built and claiming it as your own. That's not. I'm not finished, I said. The board can vote on whatever they want. They can pass a resolution, they can make a motion, they can send in a SWAT team for all I care. It doesn't change the math. My patent is my patent. My algorithm is my algorithm. And until I sign a release, the company is flying on borrowed wings. I hung up. My hands were trembling, but not with fear. With adrenaline. With the electric thrill of finally fighting back, that I looked up at the sky. The clouds were breaking, slivers of blue cutting through the gray. The storm was passing, or maybe it was just beginning. I didn't know which, and I didn't care. I had a war to win. By the time I got back to my apartment, the light on my answering machine was blinking red with a fury. 17 new messages. I poured myself a glass of water and pressed play. The first 5 were from Mark, alternating between pleading and threatening. The next 3 were from board members I'd never even met, people who had bought their seats with connections and money, not talent. The 9th was from a reporter at TechCrunch who had somehow gotten wind of my resignation and wanted a comment. I made a mental note to call her back later. The right story, told at the right time, could be a weapon as sharp as any patent. The last message was from Arthur Sterling. His voice was calm, measured, the voice of a man who had won more cases than he'd lost and knew it. Ms. Vance, I'm going to be frank with you. The board is prepared to offer you a settlement that exceeds your fair market valuation by 20%. This is a generous offer, and it comes with a full release of all claims, both present and future. You take the money, you walk away, and you never speak about Nexus Dynamics again. I need your answer by midnight tonight. If I don't hear from you, we will proceed with litigation. And I assure you, Ms. Vance, that process will be painful for everyone involved. I deleted the message and smiled. 20% above fair market valuation was a joke. They were trying to buy me off with pocket change while they were sitting on a gold mine I had discovered and mapped out entirely on my own. I opened my laptop and pulled up the second spreadsheet. This one was different from the valuation models I'd sent the board. This one was a map of everything I knew about every person on the board, every investor, every lawyer they might hire. I'd started it in my past life, a desperate attempt to find leverage before they destroyed me. I'd never finished it. I never had the chance. But now I had time. Now I had Anya. And now I had the knowledge of exactly how every single one of them would try to destroy me. That I started with Mark. Mark's weaknesses were easy. Greed, arrogance, and a deep, abiding insecurity about his own abilities. He'd never written a line of code in his life. He'd never built anything that didn't crumble the moment he walked away. But he was brilliant at taking credit, brilliant at convincing people that the work of others was his own. I'd been his most valuable asset. I'd been the quiet one, the one who worked in the background, the one who made him look good. And I'd been too blind to see that he was using me the entire time. I pulled up a file I'd saved in a hidden folder. It was a backup of his personal email account from 2017, the year after I'd signed away my rights. In my past life, I'd hacked it after the lawsuit started, hoping to find something useful. I'd found a gold mine. There were emails to offshore accounts, instructions to move money before the taxes came due. There were emails to a woman who was not me, romantic entanglements he'd kept hidden while we were still together. There were emails to investors, promising them inflated returns based on projections he'd fabricated. There were emails to the board, telling them I was unstable, unreliable, a liability. I'd kept all of it. I'd saved it to a drive and hidden it in a place no one would ever think to look. In my past life, I'd never used it. I'd been too proud, too principled. I'd wanted to win clean, to prove that I was better than them. This time, I didn't care about clean. I cared about winning. I moved on to the board. The board was a collection of has-beens and wannabes, people who had failed upward their entire careers and somehow ended up in positions of power they didn't deserve. There was Thompson, the chairman, a man who had once run a tech company into the ground and then blamed the economy. There was Chen, the finance expert who had built a reputation on short-term gains and long-term disasters. There was Morrison, the marketing guru, who had never met a trend she couldn't chase into obscurity. Every single one of them had secrets. Every single one of them had something to hide. And I knew exactly where to find it. Thompson had a gambling problem. He'd been running up debts at casinos in Atlantic City for years, and the whispers were starting to follow him to work. He'd been paying them off with stock options and insider tips, a strategy that was teetering on the edge of something very illegal. Chen had been cooking the books for years. Not in a way that was obvious, not in a way that would raise red flags immediately. Just a little here, a little there. A fraction of a percentage point shaved off the expenses, a few extra decimal points on the revenue. He thought he was untouchable. He thought no one would ever look closely enough to notice. Morrison had been funneling company money to a side project she'd started with a boyfriend. A lifestyle brand that was hemorrhaging cash and would never turn a profit. The only thing keeping it alive was a steady drip of Nexus Dynamics funding, carefully hidden in the marketing budget. I saved all of this in a new document. Then I started on the investors. Whitestone Ventures was the biggest name. They'd led the Series A and were signed on for the B. The managing partner was a man named Harris, a slick, silver-haired operator who'd made his fortune betting on tech companies and then flipping them before they crashed. He was the one Mark had been courting, the one who'd whispered promises of a quick payout if the company went public. Harris had his own problems. A messy divorce, a mistress who was starting to make noise, and a tax evasion scheme that would unravel the moment someone with the right knowledge looked at his returns. He'd been careful. He'd been clever. But he'd been arrogant, too. Arrogant enough to think no one would ever dare to cross him. I smiled. Arrogance was always the weakness. Every one of them was arrogant. Every one of them was confident that their money and their connections would protect them from the consequences of their actions. They'd all watched me fall, seen me destroyed, and they'd assumed I would stay down forever. They were wrong. I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair. The sun was starting to set over Brooklyn, casting long shadows across the floor. My apartment was quiet, but my head was buzzing with plans and contingencies. A knock on the door startled me. I got up and peered through the peephole. It was Anya. I opened the door. "You came back." "Of course I came back," she said, pushing past me into the apartment. "I've been thinking about what you said. All of it. And I realized something." "What's that?" "You're not crazy," she said. "I mean, you might be a little crazy, but you're not wrong." I started looking at the numbers after we talked. Just the public ones. The ones anyone can see. And they don't add up. The revenue projections are inflated. The expenses are undercounted. And the patents. She stopped, her eyes widening. "Alara, you own the core patent. The one that the entire company is built on. You know that, right?" "I know." "And you know that Mark has been telling everyone you don't. He's been telling the investors that you signed over all IP rights in the original partnership agreement. He's been telling them you have no claim on anything." "I know." She stared at me. "And you're just sitting here. You're not calling a lawyer. You're not screaming." "I already called a lawyer," I said. "Or I will. Tomorrow. Right now, I'm doing something more important." "What's that?" "I'm building a case. I'm building a case that's so airtight, so complete, so devastating that they won't even try to fight in court. I'm going to make them come to me. I'm going to make them beg." Anya was quiet for a moment. Then she sat down on my couch and pulled out her notebook. "Okay," she said. "What do you need me to do?" "I need you to be my inside woman," I said. "I need you to go back to the office tomorrow like nothing happened. I need you to smile at Mark, be friendly, keep your head down. And I need you to report back to me every night. Every conversation. Every email. Every meeting." "Done," she said. "But what about you? What are you going to do?" "I'm going to wait," I said. "And I'm going to let them sweat." "Wait for what?" "For them to make a mistake," I said. "For them to get scared enough to do something stupid. And then I'm going to pounce." She nodded slowly. "You've got a plan." "I've got a plan," I agreed. "And I've got you. That makes me a lot more dangerous than they think." We spent the next hour going over details. I told her what to listen for, who to watch, what to document. She took notes furiously, asking questions, pushing back when something didn't make sense. She was sharp, quicker than I remembered from my past life. She hadn't been tempered by the betrayal yet, hadn't learned to be suspicious of everyone. But she was learning. When she finally left, I was alone again. The apartment felt quieter, emptier. I walked to the window and looked out at the city. Brooklyn was lit up, a sprawl of lights that stretched all the way to the horizon. Somewhere out there, Mark was pacing in his office, trying to figure out what I was going to do next. Somewhere out there, the board was arguing, debating, panicking. Somewhere out there, Arthur Sterling was drafting legal documents, preparing for a fight he didn't realize he'd already lost. I smiled again. It was becoming a habit. My phone buzzed. The unknown number again. Asterisk, you're doing it right. But be careful. Harris is bringing in a fixer. Someone who knows how to break people. Asterisk, I read the message twice. A fixer. Someone who knew how to break people. In my past life, I'd met someone like that. A consultant hired by the board to handle the fallout of my firing. His name was Graves. He was a former intelligence officer, the kind of man who could ruin you with a phone call and never leave a trace. He'd been the one who discovered my hacking attempt, the one who'd threatened to press charges if I didn't back down. I'd backed down. I'd been terrified. But that was then. This was now. I typed back. What do you know about Graves? The reply came faster than I expected. Asterisk, everything. He's already in New York. He's meeting with Harris tonight. Watch your back. Asterisk, I set the phone down and took a breath.
Graves.
The man who'd almost destroyed me. The man who'd been the final nail in the coffin of my past life. He was here. He was already in the game. But this time I knew who he was. I knew how he worked. I knew the tricks he used, the leverage he exploited, the weaknesses he looked for. I'd been studying him for years, planning how to counter him. I'd never gotten the chance to use that knowledge. Now I opened my laptop again and pulled up the file I'd created on Graves. It was thin, incomplete, but it had the essentials: his network, his methods, his price. He worked for whoever paid him the most. He was loyal to no one but himself. That was his weakness. I started typing. A new plan, a new strategy. I needed to hit him before he hit me. I needed to make it clear that I wasn't the same woman he'd broken in the past. I was harder, sharper, angrier. And I had nothing left to lose. By the time I finished writing, it was nearly midnight. My phone was quiet. No messages, no calls. The silence was loud, heavier than I expected. I poured myself another glass of water and sat down in the dark. My mind was racing, but my body was starting to crash. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving a bone-deep exhaustion behind. I closed my eyes and let myself drift. Just for a moment. And then I was back. Back in the past. Back in the darkest moment of my life. I was in a conference room. The board was sitting across the table, 10 of them, all in identical black suits. Their faces were blank, impassive. Graves was standing by the door, arms crossed, watching. Mark was at the head of the table, smiling. That same charming smile. Ilara, we've made our decision. It's time for you to go. There's been a mistake, I heard myself say. I built this company. I built the algorithm. You can't just. We can, he said.
And we are.
You're being terminated for cause. We have documentation that proves you violated your fiduciary duties. You've been operating outside the scope of your authority. The board has no choice but to let you go. The documentation is fabricated, I said. You know it's fabricated. We know no such thing, Thompson said. The evidence is clear. And Ms. Vance, I must caution you, if you pursue this further, we will pursue legal action. The company has a fiduciary duty to its shareholders. I looked around the table. 10 faces. 10 people who had watched me build a company from nothing. 10 people who had taken my money, my work, my vision, and were now using it to destroy me, and not one of them would meet my eyes. Graves stepped forward. Ms. Vance, he said, his voice calm and professional. I'd advise you to accept the board's decision. We don't want this to be unpleasant, but it will be if you force the issue. I woke with a gasp. The apartment was dark, the streetlights casting pale shadows across the ceiling. My heart was pounding, my hands shaking, but I wasn't in the conference room. I wasn't in the past. I was here in my apartment in 2016. And none of that had happened yet. I took a breath. Then another. The panic slowly receded, leaving behind a cold, clear anger. Graves was going to try the same tricks. He was going to try to intimidate me, to threaten me, to make me believe I was powerless. He was going to try to make me doubt myself, to question my own judgment, to give up before I'd even started. I wasn't going to let him. I got up and walked to the bathroom. I splashed cold water on my face and stared at my reflection. The woman looking back at me was younger than I remembered. Her eyes were sharper, her jaw set with a determination that hadn't been there before. She had been through hell, and she had come out the other side. She knew what was coming, and she was ready. I smiled at her. She smiled back. "Let's do this," I said. The next morning, I was at the office by 8, not the Nexus Dynamics office. That would be too obvious. I was at a co-working space in Soho, one I'd used in my past life when I needed a place to think. It was quiet, anonymous, and completely off the books. I'd reserved a private room and set up my laptop. Then I called a reporter from TechCrunch. "Hi," I said. "This is Alara Vance. I heard you were looking for a comment about my departure from Nexus Dynamics." The reporter, a woman named Jordan, was surprised. "Ms. Vance." "Yes, I was. I'm glad you called back. Can you confirm the rumors that you left under a hostile resignation?" "I can confirm that I resigned," I said. "And I can confirm that the reasons for my resignation are going to be a matter of public record very soon. But I want to give you the story first." "What story?" "The real story," I said. "The one that Mark and the board have been trying to bury. The one about the theft of intellectual property, the fraud, the embezzlement. Are you interested?" There was a long pause. "Ms. Vance, that's a serious accusation." "It's not an accusation," I said. "It's a confession. I'm confessing that I was a fool. I was a fool to trust Mark. I was a fool to sign away my rights. But I'm not a fool anymore. And I have the evidence to prove everything I'm telling you." "Can you send me the evidence? I can show it to you," I said. "In person. Are you free this afternoon?" "I can make myself free." "Good," I said. "I'll send you an address. 3 o'clock. Come alone." I hung up and stared at the phone. The first move was made. The first domino was falling, but I wasn't done. Not yet. I had another call to make. I dialed the number for Arthur Sterling's office. His assistant answered. "This is Alara Vance," I said. "Tell Mr. Sterling that I've decided to accept his offer. I'll take the 20% over fair market valuation, but I have conditions." "He'll want to discuss those conditions with you directly," the assistant said. "Of course he will," I said. "Tell him I'll meet him at his office at noon. I'll bring my own lawyer." The assistant paused. "You have a lawyer already." "I have a lawyer," I said. "And I have a document that I'm going to ask him to review. Tell Mr. Sterling it's a settlement agreement. And tell him that if he tries to pull any of his usual tricks, I'll walk out and the offer is off the table. Permanently." I hung up before she could respond. Then I smiled. I didn't actually have a lawyer, but I knew one. In my past life, I'd worked with a woman named Maria Reyes, a fierce, brilliant attorney who specialized in intellectual property cases. She'd fought for me when no one else would. She'd believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. We hadn't met yet. In this timeline, she didn't know me. But I knew her. And I knew exactly how to get her attention. I spent the next hour writing a proposal. A detailed, technical, legally precise proposal that laid out my case against the board. It was airtight. It was devastating. And it was exactly the kind of challenge that Maria Reyes wouldn't be able to resist. I printed it out, slipped it into a folder, and headed for the courthouse. She'd be there, arguing a case in front of a judge. She always was, at this time of day. I found her in the hallway outside the courtroom. She was in the middle of a conversation with a junior associate, gesturing with her hands, her voice sharp and impatient. She looked exactly as I remembered. Compact, furious, brilliant. "Ms. Reyes," I said. "My name is Alara Vance. I need to hire you." She stopped mid-sentence and turned to look at me. "I'm Busse." "This won't take long," I said. "I have a case. It's a big one. I'm suing the board of Nexus Dynamics for fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and intellectual property theft. I have the evidence, and I have the time and resources to take it all the way." "Then why do you need me?" "Because they're going to try to bury me," I said. "They're going to throw everything they have at me. Lawyers, fixers, Private investigators. I need someone who's not afraid of that. Someone who's fought against bigger odds than this. Her eyes narrowed. What's the offer? 40% of the settlement, I said.
Plus expense.
And the chance to bring down a group of people who've been committing fraud for years. She studied me for a long moment. Then she opened the folder and started reading. It took her 3 minutes. When she looked up, her expression had changed. There was something new in her eyes. Respect, maybe. Or hunger. You wrote this yourself. I wrote it myself. Then why don't you just represent yourself? You clearly know what you're doing. Because I don't want to win the case, I said. I want to destroy them. And I need someone who knows how to do that. She laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. I like you, Ilara Vance. I don't know you, but I like you. I'll take the case. But I have conditions. What are they? Full disclosure. Everything you know, everything you've done. Everything you're planning to do. I need to know it all. No secrets, no surprises. Deal, I said, and I get final say on strategy. You're smart, but you're not a lawyer. You don't know what you're doing in a courtroom. I do. If I say we do something a certain way, we do it that way. Deal, I said again, as she smiled. It was a sharp, predatory smile. Then let's go ruin some people. We spent the next 2 hours going over the details. I told her everything, the patents, the contracts, the board secrets. She asked questions, pushed back, made me defend every claim. By the time we were done, she had a better understanding of my case than I did. This is good, she said, leaning back in her chair. This is really good. You've got them on fraud, you've got them on breach of fiduciary duty, and you've got them on intellectual property theft. Any one of those would be enough to make them settle. All 3 together, she whistled. They're going to have to pay through the nose. Good, I said. They deserve it. Maybe they do, she said. But you need to understand something, Ilara. Once we start this, there's no going back. They're going to fight dirty. They're going to try to destroy your reputation, destroy your relationships, destroy everything you've built. Are you ready for that? I've been ready for that for 10 years, I said. She studied me again. Okay, she said. I'll start drafting the complaint. But I need you to do one thing for me. What's that? Stay out of the news. Don't talk to reporters, don't talk to investors, don't talk to anyone. Let me do the talking. The less they know about you, the harder it'll be for them to attack you. I nodded. I can do that. Good, she said. Now get out of here. I have work to do. I left the courthouse feeling lighter than I had in years. The sun was shining, the streets were crowded, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't alone. I walked back to the co-working space and gathered my things. I'd done what I needed to do. The lawyer was in place, the reporter was on the hook, and the board was about to realize they'd made a very, very big mistake. That my phone buzzed. It was a text from the unknown number. Asterisk Graves just got your file. He's reading it now. He's not happy. Asterisk I smiled. Good. Let him be unhappy. Let him realize that the woman he'd broken once was not the woman he was dealing with now. I typed back. Asterisk good. Let him read it. Let him see what he's up against. Asterisk the reply came. Asterisk he's already calling Harris. He's worried. He should be. You're doing exactly what you need to do. Keep going. Asterisk I didn't need the encouragement. But it felt good to hear it anyway. That I walked out into the bright afternoon and started planning my next move. The war was just beginning, and I was already winning. At noon I walked into the offices of Hendricks and Sterling like I owned the place. The receptionist tried to make me wait. I told her I'd rather wait in Arthur Sterling's office, and I walked past her before she could stop me. Sterling was on the phone when I opened his door. He looked up, startled, and I held up a finger. I sat down in the chair across from his desk and crossed my legs. He ended the call faster than I expected. Ms. Vance, he said, recovering quickly. You're early. I'm punctual, I said. There's a difference. My lawyer is on her way. She'll be here in 15 minutes. Your lawyer, he repeated, the words tasting sour in his mouth. I was under the impression you didn't have representation. You were under the wrong impression, I said. I have a very good lawyer. She specializes in intellectual property and fraud cases. I think you'll find her quite formidable. Sterling leaned back in his chair and studied me. He was a tall man, thin, with the kind of face that didn't give away much. His suit was expensive, his tie perfectly knotted. He was the kind of man who had built a career on making other people feel small. I didn't feel small. I felt invincible. "Let me be frank with you, Ms. Vance," he said. "The board is not interested in a prolonged legal battle. They want to settle this quickly and quietly, but they're not going to be extorted. If you think you can come in here with vague threats and walk away with a fortune, you're mistaken." "I'm not making vague threats," I said. "I'm making specific ones. I have documents. I have emails. I have financial records that trace directly to board members who have been defrauding the company for years. And I have a patent that makes everything else irrelevant." He didn't flinch, but his eyes flickered. It was small, almost imperceptible, but I caught it. "You're bluffing." "I'm not," I said. "And I'm going to prove it to you. But I want you to understand something first. I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to tell you what's going to happen. The board is going to pay me fair market valuation for my shares, plus a premium for emotional damages, plus a settlement for the intellectual property theft. And then they're going to sign a document admitting everything." Sterling was quiet for a long moment. "You're insane." "I'm right," I said. "And there's a difference." Maria walked in before he could respond. She was carrying a thick folder, her face set in the kind of expression that made people nervous. She had that effect on people, and she knew it. "Mr. Sterling," she said, extending her hand. "Maria Reyes. I've heard a lot about you." Sterling shook her hand. His smile was tight. "I wish I could say the same, Ms. Reyes. But I'm afraid I haven't heard of you." "Then you haven't been paying attention," she said. "I've been practicing for 15 years. I've won cases against firms 3 times this size. And I'm about to win this one." Sterling's smile vanished. "Let's get down to business, shall we, for the next hour?" We went back and forth. Sterling tried every trick in the book: threats, flattery, appeals to reason. He tried to make me feel guilty about the employees who would lose their jobs if the board was forced to liquidate. He tried to make me feel afraid of the legal costs, of the endless depositions, of the years it would take to see the case through. None of it worked. I'd been through worse. I'd been through the actual end of the world, as far as my old life was concerned. There was nothing he could threaten me with that I hadn't already experienced. Maria was relentless. She pushed back on every point, interrupted every line of argument, made Sterling's life a living hell for 60 straight minutes. By the time we stood up to leave, he was visibly rattled. "This isn't over," he said as we walked to the door. "The board will never agree to these terms." "Then they'll have to deal with the consequences," Maria said. "We'll see them in court. And Mr. Sterling, I'd advise you to warn them that I don't lose." We walked out into the hallway, and Maria let out a long breath. That was intense. "You were brilliant," I said. "I know," she said. "But he's not wrong. The board is going to fight this. They're going to drag it out as long as they can. We need to be ready." "We're ready," I said. "We're more ready than they are." Maria nodded. Then she pulled out her phone and started typing furiously. I walked back to the co-working space and collapsed into a chair. The adrenaline was wearing off again, and I was exhausted. I hadn't slept well in days, and my body was starting to protest, but I couldn't afford to stop. Not yet. There was too much at stake. Did I open my laptop and check my email? There was a message from Jordan, the reporter. She was interested in the story, wanted to know more. I sent her a brief reply, telling her I'd be in touch. Then I opened a new document and started writing a letter to Mark. A letter I'd been composing in my head for years, in the dark hours when I couldn't sleep. It was a letter I never thought I'd actually send. But I was going to send it now, and I was going to enjoy every word that I spent the rest of the afternoon writing. I wrote about the day we met, the day he'd convinced me I was nothing without him. I wrote about the hours I'd spent coding in the basement, the sleepless nights, the dreams I'd given up because he told me they were impractical. I wrote about the betrayal, the moment I realized he'd been using me all along. And then I wrote about the future he didn't know I'd already lived. I described his downfall in excruciating detail, the lawsuits, the scandals, the way he'd end up alone and disgraced. I didn't threaten him. I didn't warn him. I just told him the truth. And I let him decide what to do with it. I hit send. My phone buzzed almost immediately. It was a text from Anya. Board meeting in 10.
Mark is sweating.
Thompson is shouting. Chun is trying to calm everyone down. Morrison is crying. I smiled. Anything else? Harris just walked in. He's with Graves. They're not happy. Graves. The fixer. The man who'd broken me before. Keep watching. I typed. Tell me everything. The replies came in rapid succession. Anya was in the conference room, pretending to take notes, while she documented every word. The board was in chaos. Mark was trying to take control, but no one was listening. Thompson was threatening to call in the SEC. Chun was warning everyone to calm down before they made things worse. Morrison was crying about some project she'd been running on the side that was about to implode. And Graves was watching. Just watching. Waiting for his moment. He hasn't said a word. Anya texted. He's just standing in the corner. Looking at everyone. Making them nervous. I knew that look. I'd seen it before. It was the look of a man who was calculating, assessing, waiting to strike. Graves was a predator. He didn't waste energy on posturing. He waited for his prey to make a mistake. I needed to make sure he didn't find one. I got up and started pacing. There was too much at stake to make a wrong move. One mistake and Graves would pounce. He would find a weakness, exploit it, and destroy me all over again. But I wasn't the same woman he'd broken. I'd learned from my mistakes. I'd spent years studying him, analyzing him, learning to predict his moves, and I knew his weakness. Graves was a man of habit.
He had a routine, a pattern.
He started every investigation the same way, by isolating his target, cutting them off from their support network, making them feel alone and vulnerable. Then he'd move in, offering a way out, a chance to save themselves, to betray their allies in exchange for their own safety. I'd fallen for it once. I'd refused to betray anyone, and he destroyed me anyway. But he'd made a mistake. He'd shown me his method, and I'd spent the rest of my life preparing to counter it, that I wouldn't be alone this time. I had Anya. I had Maria. I had a network of allies I was building from scratch, and I had the knowledge of his every move. My phone buzzed. Anya again. Meeting's over. Mark is pacing in the hallway. He's on his phone. Looks like he's trying to call you. I let it ring. Then I sent him a text. I'll call you when I'm ready. Not before. He replied instantly. Alara, please. We need to talk. Face to face. Just you and me. I thought about it. A face-to-face meeting with Mark was risky. But it was also an opportunity. An opportunity to see his face, to read his body language, to know exactly what the board was planning. I typed back. Tomorrow.
Noon.
The diner on Montague. Come alone. I stared at the phone for a long moment. Then I put it down and took a breath. Tomorrow. I'd face Mark. I'd face the man who destroyed me in my past life. And I'd show him exactly who I'd become. The rest of the day was a blur. I met with Maria again, reviewed documents, prepared for the next phase of the legal battle. I fielded calls from Jordan, who was getting impatient. I sent emails to Anya, coordinating our next moves. By the time night fell, I was exhausted. I went back to my apartment, made a cup of tea, and sat by the window. The city was quiet. The lights were starting to come on one by one, painting the skyline in shades of amber and gold. It was beautiful, in a way I'd never quite noticed before. In my past life, I'd been too busy to notice. Too consumed by work, by stress, by the constant pressure to prove myself. I'd spent years running in place, never stopping to look around. Now I was looking. And what I saw gave me hope. I was young. I had time. I had resources. I had allies. And I had a second chance that almost no one ever got. I wasn't going to waste it. I finished my tea, set the cup down, and went to bed. Tomorrow would be a long day. I needed my rest. When I woke, the sun was already high. I checked my phone. Messages from Anya, from Maria, from Jordan. Nothing from Mark. I smiled. He was probably still pacing, still trying to figure out what I was going to do. Let him wonder. Let him sweat. He deserved it. I got dressed, grabbed my bag, and headed to Montague. The diner was busy when I got there. I found a booth in the corner and ordered coffee. Then I waited. Mark walked in at noon on the dot. He was wearing a suit, his hair slicked back, his face red. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. He walked over to the booth and sat down across from me. "Thanks for coming," I said. "Thanks for agreeing to meet," he said. "I wasn't sure you would."
I almost didn't, I said.
"But I'm curious. I want to know what you're going to say to me." He leaned forward.
Elare, I'm sorry.
"I know that doesn't mean much right now, but I'm truly sorry. I made a mistake. A huge mistake. And I want to fix it." "You want to fix it?" I repeated. "How? Come back to the company," he said. "I'll give you your shares back. I'll give you the CTO position back. We can go back to how it was before." "Before," I said. "Before you tried to destroy me. Before you signed away my rights, before you told everyone I was unstable," he flinched. "I was wrong. I was scared. The pressure was too much. I panicked." "You didn't panic," I said. "You planned. You planned it all. You were methodical. You were deliberate. And now you're scared because I'm fighting back." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "What do you want, Alara?" "I want you to admit it," I said. "I want you to stand up in front of the board and tell them what you did. I want you to tell everyone what you did. And then I want you to leave." "Leave, resign," I said. "Step down as CEO. Disappear. I don't care where you go, as long as it's not near me."
He stared at me.
"You can't be serious." "I'm dead serious," I said. "You tried to destroy me. You were willing to destroy me to save yourself. And you were willing to destroy the company, the employees, everything I built. You don't get to walk away from that. You don't get to pretend it didn't happen. Alara, you don't understand. The board won't let me resign. They've invested too much in me. They'll fight it." "Then let them fight it," I said. "But if they do, I'll destroy all of you. I'll take the company to court. I'll expose everything. The fraud, the embezzlement, the cover-ups. I have the evidence. I have the lawyers. And I have nothing to lose." He was silent for a long time. Then he said, "You're not the same person you were." "You're right," I said. "I'm not. I'm better.
I'm stronger.
And I'm not going to let you, or anyone else, ever hurt me again." He stared at me. Then he shook his head, stood up, and walked out of the diner. I watched him go. Then I picked up my coffee and took a sip. It was cold, but I didn't care. The conversation had gone exactly how I'd planned, and I pulled out my phone and texted Anya. He came. He begged. I refused. "Now we wait." Her reply was instant. He's calling a board meeting. They're going to try to make a counteroffer. Good. I typed. Let them. I'm ready. I finished my coffee, paid the bill, and walked out into the afternoon sun. The city was buzzing, alive with energy. I felt the same way. My war was far from over. But I'd won the first major battle. And that was enough. The board convened at 8 the next morning. I knew this because Anya texted me from the bathroom, her fingers flying across the screen while she pretended to fix her makeup. Harris was there. Graves was there. Mark was pacing like a caged animal. Thompson was already shouting about something. Chin was trying to calm everyone down. Morrison was crying again. I read the messages while I drank my coffee. The apartment was quiet, the morning light soft and golden. It felt like the calm before a storm. I knew what they were doing. They were trying to strategize. They were trying to figure out how to counter me, how to undermine me, how to make me go away. They were going to throw everything they had at me, and they were going to try to break me. What they didn't know was that I'd already been broken. I'd been broken so completely that there was nothing left to shatter. I'd been rebuilt from the ground up, stronger and harder than before. My phone buzzed. Anya he's making a list. Your weaknesses. Your vulnerabilities. He's trying to find something to use against you. I smiled. Let him try. I had no weaknesses left. Everything I'd cared about, everything I'd loved, everything I'd held dear. I'd already lost it all. There was nothing he could take from me that I hadn't already given up. I typed back. Asterisk let him make his list. I'll make mine. Asterisk I opened my laptop and started writing. Names, dates, events. Every single thing I knew about every single person in that room. Their secrets, their lies, their crimes. I laid it all out in black and white, a meticulous record of their sins. When I was done, I printed it out and put it in a folder. Then I called Maria. Are you ready? I asked. I was born ready, she said. The complaint is drafted. I'm filing it this afternoon. Wait, I said. Not yet. I need you to hold off for a few hours. I have something I want to do first. What? I want to give them one last chance, I said. I want to see if they're smart enough to take it. Maria was quiet for a moment. Elara, you know they're not going to take it. They're too arrogant. Too greedy. They're going to fight you. I know, I said. But I want to give them the chance anyway. I want to be able to say I tried. I want to be able to look back on this moment and know that I did everything I could. I understand, she said. But don't wait too long. The longer we wait, the more time they have to prepare. I won't, I said. I'll call you in a few hours. I hung up and stared at the phone. Then I called Anya. Are you in a place where you can talk? I asked. Bathroom, she said. I've been hiding in here for 15 minutes. I think they're starting to wonder where I am. I need you to do something for me, I said. I need you to get me a meeting with Mark. Just the two of us. Tonight. Elara, that's insane. He's been pacing around all morning, and he looks like he's about to snap. You don't want to be alone with him right now. I can handle him, I said. I've handled him before. I'll handle him again. I just need you to set up the meeting. She was quiet for a long moment. Okay, she said. I'll do it. But you have to promise me something. What? Promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you won't let him get under your skin. I promise, I said. I've been under his skin for 10 years. It's time for him to feel what that's like. I hung up and took a breath. Then I started getting ready. The meeting was at 9. I arrived at the office at 8:30, walking through the lobby like I owned the place. The security guard tried to stop me, but I smiled and walked past him. I had a key card that Anya had given me the day before, a temporary pass that would get me through the doors. I took the elevator to the executive floor. The hallway was quiet, the carpet thick and silent. I walked to the corner office, the one that used to be mine, and knocked. Mark opened the door. He looked surprised to see me. You came. I said I would, I said. Can I come in? He stepped aside and let me enter. The office was familiar but different. The furniture had been rearranged. The paintings changed. It felt like someone else's space now, not mine. I sat down in the chair across from his desk. He sat down behind it, his hands clasped together. You wanted to talk, he said. I wanted to talk. I agreed. I wanted to tell you something. Something I should have told you a long time ago. He leaned forward, his eyes wary. What is it? I know what you did, I said. I know everything. The emails, the accounts, the lies you told the investors. I know about the board secrets. I know about the fraud. I know about all of it. He didn't say anything. He just stared at me, his face paled. I have the evidence, I said. I have copies of everything. And I've given it all to my lawyer. If you don't do what I say, I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to destroy all of you. What do you want? He asked. His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. I want you to resign, I said. I want you to step down as CEO. I want you to sign over your shares to me. And I want you to leave town. He laughed. It was a hollow, broken sound. You want me to just walk away after everything I've done, after everything I've built? Everything you've built, I repeated. You haven't built anything. You've stolen everything. You've taken credit for other people's work. You've used people and discarded them. You've destroyed lives. And now you're going to pay for it. I can't just resign, he said. The board won't let me. They'll fight it. Then fight them, I said. Or don't. I don't care. All I care about is that you're gone. You're out of my life. You're out of my company. And you're never coming back. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, What if I don't do it? Then I'll take you to court, I said. I'll expose everything. I'll make sure the world knows what you did. I'll make sure you never work in this industry again. I'll make sure you end up in prison. You can't do that, he said. I can, I said. I have the evidence. I have the witnesses. And I have the money to see it through. He stared at me. Then he shook his head. You've changed. You have no idea. I said, and I stood up to leave. He caught my arm. Alara, wait. Please.
I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. I'll do whatever you want. Just please don't destroy me. I looked down at his hand on my arm. I remembered all the times he'd touched me like this. All the times he'd made me believe he loved me. All the times he'd lied. I pulled my arm away. It's too late for sorry, I said. You had your chance. You had 1,000 chances. You never took any of them. I walked out of the office without looking back, that the hallway was empty. I walked to the elevator and pressed the button. The doors opened, and I stepped inside. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of the boardroom. The door was open, and I could see Harris and Thompson and Chun and Morrison sitting around the table, their faces grimmed, and standing in the corner was Graves. He was watching me. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were sharp. He knew what I'd just done. He knew I'd just cornered Mark. And he was already planning his next move. That I smiled at him. Then the doors closed, and the elevator descended. That I walked out of the building into the cool night air. The street was empty, the city quiet. I looked up at the sky. The stars were out, bright and clear. That I pulled out my phone and called Maria. Now, I said. File the complaint now.
Are you sure? She asked.
I'm sure, I said. He's not going to resign. He's going to fight. So we need to be ready. Okay, she said. I'll file it tonight. You'll have your day in court. Thank you, I said. I'll see you tomorrow. I hung up and started walking. The night was cold, but I didn't feel it. I was too focused on what was coming next. That the war was about to escalate. And I was ready for it. The complaint hit the news at 9:47 the next morning. Jordan from TechCrunch had been waiting for it, and she published the story within minutes of the filing. The headline read, Nexus Dynamics Board accused of fraud, theft, and breach of fiduciary duty in explosive lawsuit filed by ex-co-founder. I read the article 3 times. It was perfect. Jordan had captured every detail, every accusation, every piece of damning evidence I'd given her. She'd quoted Maria extensively, painting a picture of a board that had been systematically defrauding the company and its shareholders for years. The comments section exploded. People were outraged. Investors were panicking. The stock, which had been trading on secondary markets at a steep discount, started plummeting. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Mark was calling, texting, emailing, trying to reach me. The board was sending frantic messages. Even Graves sent a message from a number I didn't recognize, warning me that I had no idea what I was getting into. I deleted it all. Anya texted me. Asterisk, it's chaos here. Thompson is screaming. Chun is trying to cover his tracks. Morrison is still crying. Mark is just sitting in his office, staring at the wall. Asterisk, I typed back. Asterisk, good. Let them panic. I want them to know what it feels like. Asterisk Harris is on the phone with the lawyers. He's trying to get them to file an emergency motion. He wants to have the case thrown out. Asterisk, let him try. Asterisk, I wrote. Asterisk, Maria is already on it. She's not going to let them get away with anything. Asterisk. Anya's reply came. Asterisk, she's good. I've been watching her. She's relentless. Asterisk, she's the best. Asterisk, I wrote. That's why I hired her. I set my phone down and took a breath. The first blow had been struck. Now I needed to follow up. I opened my laptop and drafted a statement. A public statement, addressed to the media and the public. In it, I laid out my side of the story, explained why I'd resigned, and detailed the evidence I'd uncovered. I didn't hold back. I named names, exposed secrets, and made it clear that I was not going to stop until the board had been held accountable. I sent the statement to Jordan, with instructions to publish it immediately. Then I called Maria. The statement is out, I said. I'm going to follow up with a press conference tomorrow. I want you to be there. I'll be there, she said. But Alara, are you sure about this? Once you go public, there's no going back. They're going to come after you with everything they have. I know, I said. I'm ready for them. The press conference was at noon the next day. I stood at a podium in a rented conference room, surrounded by reporters and cameras. Maria stood beside me, her face stern and professional. I started with my prepared remarks. I talked about the company, the vision I'd had when I started it, the work I'd done to build it from nothing. I talked about the betrayal, the moment I realized that Mark and the board had been scheming against me. I talked about the evidence, the documents, the emails that proved everything that I didn't want to do this. I said, I didn't want to drag this company through the mud, but I couldn't stand by and watch it get destroyed. I couldn't let them get away with what they've done. The reporters started shouting questions. I answered them calmly, carefully, never losing my composure. Maria stepped in when I needed her, deflecting the tough ones, redirecting the conversation. When it was over, I stepped away from the podium and let out a breath. It was done. The story was out. There was no taking it back. Anya texted me. *, you were incredible. The whole office is watching. Mark just turned off his monitor and walked out. *, I smiled. *, I want him to know what it feels like to be exposed. *. The days that followed were a blur. The lawsuit moved forward, with Maria leading the charge. The board tried everything to stop it. They filed motions to dismiss, motions to seal, motions to delay. Maria shot them all down. One by one. Graves started his campaign. He reached out to my former colleagues, trying to turn them against me. He contacted the investors, trying to undermine my credibility. He even tried to threaten me directly, sending a message to my apartment that had an air of menace I recognized from my past life. I ignored him. I'd been expecting it. I'd already made contingency plans for everything he could possibly do, but Graves was more resilient than I'd anticipated. He was smart and he had resources. He'd already started reaching out to the other witnesses, trying to get them to recant their statements. And he'd started digging into Anya, trying to find something to use against her that I realized I needed to protect her. She was my most valuable ally, and she was vulnerable. I called her that night. Anya, I need you to be careful. Graves is going to try to come after you. I know, she said. He's already reached out to me. He offered me a deal. He said if I testified against you, he'd make sure I was protected. I felt a cold stab of fear. And what did you tell him? I told him to go to hell, she said. I'm not going to betray you, Alara. You're the only person who's ever given me a chance. Thank you, I said. But you need to be careful. He's going to try to find something to use against you. I know, she said. I've already deleted everything. Every text, every email, every document. There's nothing for him to find. I was quiet for a moment. How did you know to do that? I've been watching you, she said. I've been learning. You've shown me how to protect myself. I'm not going to be a victim anymore. I smiled. Neither am I. The war escalated. The board started leaking information to the press, trying to paint me as a disgruntled employee who was trying to take revenge on the company. They planted stories about my personal life, my mental health, my instability, that it didn't work. The evidence was too strong. The public had already seen the documents, read the emails, understood the depth of the fraud. They weren't going to be fooled. But the board wasn't giving up. They were fighting tooth and nail, throwing everything they had at me. It was exhausting, draining, and I was starting to feel the strain. Anya noticed. She texted me one night. *, you look tired. You need to rest. *, I wrote back. *, I can't rest. Not yet. There's too much to do. *, there's always too much to do. *, she replied. *, you need to take care of yourself. If you collapse, we all lose. *, she was right. I needed to pace myself. I took a break. I went for a walk in the park, sat on a bench, watched the sun set. I let myself breathe, let myself feel the cool air on my face. When I got back to my apartment, I felt better, lighter, ready to keep fighting it, but I knew the hardest part was still ahead. Graves hadn't played his hand yet. He was waiting for the right moment, gathering information, building a case against me. I needed to be ready. I needed to stay one step ahead of him. Always. The next morning, I got a call from Maria. Alara, we have a problem. Graves just filed a motion to have you declared mentally unfit to testify. He's trying to have you removed from the case. I felt a cold rush of anger. He can't do that. He can, she said. And he might succeed. He's got a team of psychiatrists ready to testify that you're unstable. He's got evidence, fabricated evidence, to back it up. What kind of evidence? He's using your history. The car accident, the hospital stay, your father's death. He's trying to paint you as someone who's not capable of making rational decisions. I took a breath. That's not going to work. I know, she said. But we need to prepare. We need to find our own psychiatrists, our own experts. We need to fight this. Then let's fight it, I said. I'm not going to let him win. The next few weeks were brutal. Graves pulled out all the stops. He brought in witnesses who claimed they'd seen me acting erratically. He produced documents that seemed to prove I'd threatened board members. He even found a psychiatrist who was willing to testify that I was suffering from delusions, but Maria was relentless. She fought back with everything she had. She brought in her own experts, her own witnesses. She picked apart every argument Graves made, exposing each one as flawed. The turning point came when one of Graves' witnesses recanted. She was an old colleague, someone I'd worked with years ago. She'd been pressured into testifying against me, and she'd felt guilty. She came forward and admitted that Graves had offered her money to lie if the story hit the news. It was a scandal. Graves' credibility was shattered. The board's case was in tatters. I got a call from Anya. Ilera, it's happening. Graves is being investigated. He's been accused of witness tampering. He might be disbarred. I smiled. Good. That's exactly what he deserves. The war wasn't over. But the tide was turning. The day of the settlement conference arrived like a thunderstorm. I woke before dawn, my heart pounding, a strange calm settling over me as I stared at the ceiling. It was finally here. The day I'd been waiting for, the day I'd been fighting toward, the day I'd dreamed about for 10 years. I got up, made coffee, and stood by the window watching the sun rise over Brooklyn. The city was just waking up, 1,000 stories unfolding in 1,000 different directions. I felt connected to all of them, to the people who were fighting their own battles, struggling to find their own justice. Anya texted me at 7. I'm already at the courthouse. They're all here. Mark looks like he hasn't slept in a week. Thompson is pacing. Chun is sweating. Morrison is crying again. Harris is trying to look calm, but his hands are shaking. I typed back. What about Graves? Not here. He's been suspended pending investigation. He's not allowed near the building. I felt a surge of satisfaction. Graves, the man who'd broken me, was finally being held accountable. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was a start. I finished my coffee, got dressed, and headed out the door. The courthouse was packed. Reporters lined the steps, shouting questions as I walked past. I didn't answer any of them. I kept my eyes forward, my face neutral, my step steadied up. Maria was waiting for me inside. She was wearing a sharp black suit, her hair pulled back in a tight bun, her expression fierce and focused. Ready? She asked. Ready? I said. We walked into the conference room. The board was already seated at a long table, their lawyers flanking them. Mark was in the center, his face pale, his eyes hollow. He looked like a man who had already lost everything. Arthur Sterling was there, his smile frozen, his posture stiff. He looked like he was trying to maintain control, but his facade was cracking. I took my seat across from them. Maria sat beside me, her hands resting on a thick folder of documents. I knew every word in that folder. I'd spent months putting it together, building the case that would finally bring them to their knees. The mediator, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, called the session to order. She outlined the process, the rules, the expectations. She told us we were here to find a resolution, a way to settle the case without going to trial. I listened politely. I knew we weren't going to settle. I knew they were going to try to fight me, to wear me down, to make me give up. I knew they were going to fail. We'll begin with opening statements, the mediator said. Ms. Vance, would you like to start? I nodded and stood up. My voice was calm, steady, as I addressed the room. Thank you, I said. I want to start by saying something I've never said out loud before. I'm not here for revenge. I'm not here to punish anyone. I'm here for justice. Mark shifted uncomfortably. Thompson rolled his eyes. Chun stared at the table. I continued. I started this company when I was 22. I had nothing, no money, no connections, no experience. But I had a vision. I had a dream. And I worked harder than I'd ever worked in my life to make it real. I built everything from scratch. The code, the business plan, the culture, the relationships. Every single piece of this company came from me. I paused and let the words sink in, and then I trusted the wrong people. I believed in people who didn't believe in me. I gave away my power because I was told it was the right thing to do. I let them take everything I'd built and claim it as their own. Mark's face was pale. Thompson was staring at me with a mixture of anger and fear. But I'm not here to cry about what happened, I said. I'm here to make sure it never happens again. To anyone. That's why I'm not settling. That's why I'm not backing down. I'm going to take this case to trial, and I'm going to win.
I sat down.
The room was silent. The mediator looked at the board's lawyers. Your turn, she said. Sterling stood up. He tried to be confident, but his voice wavered slightly. The board maintains that the plaintiff's accusations are baseless. They are willing to negotiate a settlement, but they will not be extorted. Then we have nothing to talk about, Maria said. We'll see you in court. The mediator called a recess. We walked out into the hallway, and Maria let out a breath. That was perfect, she said. It's not over yet, I said. They're going to come back with a counteroffer. They're going to try to wear us down.
Let them try, she said.
We've got them on the ropes. We waited in the hallway for an hour. Anya texted me updates. Mark is arguing with Sterling. Thompson is threatening to walk out. Chun is trying to broker a deal. Morrison is crying. And then, finally, the mediator came out. They're ready to negotiate, she said. They've made a new offer. I walked back into the conference room. The board was tense, their faces strained. Mark looked like he was about to be sick. Sterling stood up and cleared his throat. The board has reconsidered their position. They are prepared to offer a settlement that includes a full buyout of your shares at current market valuation, plus a cash payment for emotional damages, plus a public admission that they acted improperly. I kept my face expressionless. And what else? What else do you want? He asked, his voice strained. I want Mark to resign, I said. Immediately. I want Thompson, Chun, and Morrison to resign. I want the board to be dissolved and replaced with new, independent members. And I want a letter of apology, signed by every single one of them, published in every major newspaper. Sterling stared at me. That's not a settlement. That's a surrender. Yes, I said. That's exactly what it is. And it's the only offer you're going to get. The board erupted. Thompson shouted that he'd never resign. Chun said I was being unreasonable. Morrison started crying again. Mark just sat there, his face ashen. The mediator tried to restore order. It took 10 minutes. When the chaos settled, Sterling spoke again. We accept, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Thompson exploded.
No.
I'm not resigning. You can't force me to. Shut up, Thompson, Mark said. His voice was flat, empty. It's over. We lost. She won. Thompson stared at him, his mouth open. Then he slumped in his chair. The rest of the session was a blur of paperwork and signatures. Maria reviewed every document with hawk-like precision, making sure no one slipped anything past us. I watched the board members sign away their power, their influence, their future. It wasn't revenge. It was accountability. When it was over, I stood up and walked over to Mark. He looked up at me, his eyes red and tired. Congratulations, he said. You got what you wanted. No, I said. I got what I deserved. There's a difference. I walked out of the conference room and into the hallway. Anya was waiting for me. She hugged me, her arms tight around me.
You did it, she said.
You actually did it. We did it, I said. I couldn't have done it without you. She smiled. What now? Now I rebuild, I said. Now I build something better. Something that won't destroy the people who build it. Anya looked at me, her eyes bright. You know what? I think you're going to succeed. I know I'm going to succeed, I said. Because I'm not afraid to fail anymore. We walked out of the courthouse together. The reporters were still there, shouting questions. This time, I answered them. I told them the truth, the whole story, everything that had happened. The news spread quickly. By the evening, my story was everywhere. The public was outraged at the board's behavior, sympathetic to my fight for justice. The board's members became pariahs, their reputations ruined. Mark disappeared. He left town without telling anyone, his name a cautionary tale. Thompson was investigated for fraud. Chun was charged with embezzlement. Morrison's side project collapsed, and she was left with nothing. Harris's tax evasion scheme was exposed, and he was forced to resign from Whitestone. Graves was disbarred, his career over. And I was left with the pieces that I started rebuilding. I gathered a new team, new partners, new allies. I built a new company from the ground up, one that was different from the old one. It was smaller, humbler, but it was mine. I made sure everyone who worked for me was treated fairly, that the culture was healthy, that the mission was clear, that I also started speaking out. I gave talks at conferences, wrote articles for major publications, told my story to anyone who would listen. I didn't want to be a victim anymore. I wanted to be an inspiration. Anya stayed by my side the whole time. She became my CFO, my partner, my closest friend. She was the person I trusted most, the person who had never let me down, and I knew that I would never let her down. One night, I got a text from the unknown number. The one that had been watching me from the beginning. You did it. I always knew you would. Congratulations. I stared at the screen. Then I typed back. Who are you? The reply came. Someone who made the same mistakes you did. Someone who learned the same lessons. Someone who's proud of you. I never found out who it was. But I didn't need to. The message was enough that I put my phone down and looked out the window. The city was beautiful, the lights sparkling like stars. I felt at peace for the first time in a decade. The war was over. I had won. And I was finally free.